Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Johnson, and again, welcome to our 11th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Recognition and Service Day. It is now my honor to introduce our musical guest who will be kicking things off this morning, Danny Rivera.
Good morning. I'm so excited to be in virtual community with all of you, celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. King. And I would just say quickly that it's my hope that we will live out the dream, that we will live the dream, that we will be the dream in everything that we do, in the ways that we treat one another, in the ways that we go about doing life, that we would in all ways remember Dr. King and Coretta Scott for all that they did to bring us to the point that we are now. I will be singing Higher Ground by Stevie Wonder. And wherever you are, feel free to join and clap wherever you are. I know usually we'd be in person, but we're virtual, but that doesn't mean you can't clap. So wherever you are. People, keep on learning. Soldiers, keep on warring. Oh, world, keep on turning, 'cause it won't be too long. Oh, powers, keep on lying, while your people keep on dying. Oh, world, keep on turning, 'cause it won't be too long. Oh, I'm so darn glad he let me try it again, 'cause my last time on earth I lived a whole world of sin. I'm so glad I know more than I knew back then. Gonna keep on trying till I reach the highest ground. Oh, teachers, keep on teaching. Oh, preachers, keep on preaching. Oh, world, keep on turning, 'cause it won't be too long. And lovers, keep on loving. Believers, keep on believing. Hold on to your faith. Sleepers, just stop sleeping, 'cause it won't be too long. Oh, I'm so glad that he let me try it again, 'cause my last time on earth I lived a whole world of sin. I'm so glad I know more than I knew back then. Gonna keep on trying till I reach the highest ground. Oh, till I reach the highest ground. One more time, say, I'm so glad that he let me try it again, 'cause my last time on earth I lived a whole world of sin. I'm so glad I know more than I knew back then. Gonna keep on trying till I reach the highest ground. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny Rivera, for starting our program with such a great selection. That was just awesome. probably the best lead-in that I've ever had in speaking to any group. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 11th Annual Martin Luther King Recognition and Service Day. I'm Tom Croswell, CEO of the new organization that combines Tufts Health Plan and Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. I'm truly honored to join you today as we celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You know, following months of social and racial unrest, last week we witnessed violent attacks on our country's democracy unfolding right in our nation's capital. These attacks make today's event even more relevant and meaningful. It's really difficult to contend with the current state of our nation because we understand that the actions of some do not reflect the beliefs and values of us all. Yet we recognize that this is reality, an unfortunate reality, but a part of our country's history that we cannot afford to dismiss or to ignore. While the question of how we have arrived at this point prompts us to probe and seek answers, there are also questions of how can we learn and how do we move forward that can encourage and enable us to make a commitment to real and necessary change. This would be my challenge to you today. Ask yourself how you're going to address and condemn social and racial injustice and be an advocate for change. Our companies and our communities are only as strong as we are in the collective commitments that we make. Our new combined organization is deeply dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion as a strategic pillar for our success as a business and to make us a top place to work. Diversity and inclusion makes us a stronger organization, and we promote a culture where all of us can bring the best of ourselves to work each day and feel secure at the workplace. We're also deeply committed to eradicating health disparities that have only been exacerbated by the ongoing pandemic. A pandemic that has had a disproportionate impact on Black and Brown families. In Dr. King's own words, we know that of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. We also continue to actively support one another. While some of us have not directly experienced social or racial injustice, we can all be empathetic. We can value the personal stories and experiences of Black and Brown colleagues who have known discrimination, and we can learn and support them as allies. While we recognize that none of us can do everything, we do know that together we can have a greater impact by staying together and working together. With this, we also continue to focus on how we can bring about real change in our communities. I'm pleased to announce that in honor of Martin Luther King Day, we will expand our commitment to organizations working on social and racial justice, supporting every state in which we do business. Later this morning, you'll be meeting representatives from 2 Massachusetts organizations that receive support from our new combined organization. In addition, we're giving $5,000 grants each to the Alliance Mobilizing Our Resistance Coalition in Rhode Island, Connecticut's Core Organize Now, Prosperity Maine, and 3 New Hampshire Black Lives Matter chapters in the Seacoast, Nashua, and Manchester, all in honor of communities living Dr. King's legacy. Thank you for everyone who organized today's celebration for helping to highlight the importance of our actions in making a significant difference in our company and the communities where we live and work. Again, in the words of Dr. King, somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls on in wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals like all of you. Let's continue to work together to bring about the change we want to see. Thank you, and now let me invite to the stage the chair of the Martin Luther King Committee, Clarice Beauvais. Clarice.
Thank you, Tom, for those strong opening remarks. And what an amazing performance by Danny Rivera Jr. Higher Ground is one of my favorites. Now that's how you kick off a show. Good morning, everyone. My name is Clarice Beauvais, and I'm a program specialist on the Harvard Pilgrim Foundation team, as well as the chair of the MLK Recognition and Service Day Committee. Although we couldn't be in person this year, I am pleased that we are still able to virtually celebrate and honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The committee has put together an amazing program for you all today. We will get to hear from some impactful influencers who serve various communities, recognize 2 Massachusetts organizations who are doing the work around racial equity and empowering our youth, award scholarships to young people who are change agents within their communities, and following the formal program, an opportunity to engage in a service project. Without further ado, I'll pass this virtual mic over to my colleague, Aaron Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Clarice, and good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to virtually see you all here, and a huge thank you again for spending your morning with us to honor the legacy of Dr. King. This year, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Recognition and Service Day Committee has decided to award grants to organizations that have gone above and beyond to advocate for racial and social justice in their communities. Our first awardee is Strong Women, Strong Girls Boston. Since 2004, Strong Women, Strong Girls Boston has been empowering girls and women across Boston to realize their inner strengths and pursue their dreams. They now work in over 17 neighborhoods in Boston, supporting over 40 schools through their partnerships with 6 universities. Accepting this award on behalf of Strong Women, Strong Girls Boston is their CEO, Natalie Martinez.
Good morning, and I'm so honored to be with you here today this morning. Thank you so much for inviting us to be a part of this Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. On behalf of my team and the hundreds of girls and women in our programs, I'd like to also thank the Harvard Pilgrim Foundation, the Tufts Health Plan Foundation, and the MLK Service Committee for choosing to support our organization with this generous grant. The work and message of Dr. King is alive and well at Strong Women, Strong Girls. As stated in one of his most famous quotes, focusing on the importance of giving back, life's work is persistent upon the urgent question of what are you doing for others? At Strong Women, Strong Girls, the way that we are giving back is impacting the lives of women and girls. Our girls in grades 3 through 5 are mentored by college women who are themselves mentored by professional women. These powerful relationships are designed to empower girls and women to believe in themselves, their ability to pursue their dreams, and to change the world. We thank you again for this amazing grant. If you'd like to learn more about our organization, please go to our website at www.swsg.org. Have an amazing morning.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Our next grantee is Boston Uncornered. Boston Uncornered redirects the entrepreneurial networking and leadership skills of gang-involved youth, who they refer to as core influencers, from violence and incarceration to obtain college credentials and family-sustaining wages, driving positive change in their neighborhoods. With the skills and opportunities they develop, they empower core influencers to use their influence, leadership abilities, and networks to shift social norms in their neighborhoods, decreasing crime and increasing educational attainment and employment for all. Accepting this award on behalf of Boston Uncornered is their Director of Development, Debbie Mahace.
Thank you, Aaron. Excuse me. I'd first like to thank Harvard Pilgrim and Tufts for this generous award. I'd also like to thank the committee for putting on this fabulous event. Again, my name is Debbie Mahace, and I'm the Director of Development at College Brown Dorchester. So Boston Uncornered is a solution of College Brown Dorchester. Because we believe that our core influencers, and again, those are the students that we work with that are gang involved, they dream of success. And so choose to empower them to shift from negative behaviors to positive ones. And we do that with community-based mentors. We do that with high expectations, which include college. And we do that by financially supporting our students. 70% of our students matriculate to college. 33% of the nation's gang-involved students matriculate to college. So we believe that our students hold a unique position to make real change possible if we engage them and if we provide the resources that they need to unlock this potential. So on behalf of all of our students, everybody at College Bound, thanks again for the generosity, and know that we will continue to need all of your generous engagement. If you want any more information, please feel free to visit us at bostonuncornered.org. Thank you.
Thank you to both Debbie and Natalie and their organizations, Strong Women, Strong Girls Boston and Boston Uncornered, for the work they do in their communities. And we're looking forward to hearing more about your community impact in 2021. So let's give them both a round of applause. And with that, it's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's panel discussion, Shatyra Byson.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you all for being here with us today. My name is Shatyra Byson Whitlock, and I have the honor of being the moderator for today's panel discussion, where our theme is "Injustice Anywhere is a Threat to Justice Everywhere." Allow me to introduce our three panelists. Our first panelist is Bithiah Carter, president of New England Blacks in Philanthropy. She assists philanthropists and philanthropic entities to support and invest responsibly in communities of color. Our second panelist is Danny Rivera, a multidisciplinary singer, songwriter, record producer, and thoughtful advocate for social impact, equity, and empowerment, whom we just heard from a few moments ago. Our final panelist today is Sean Ellis, an advocate for criminal justice and prison reform and the subject of Netflix docuseries Trial 4. Welcome to the three of you, and thank you for taking the time to have this discussion with us today. I hope you're all doing well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right, so why don't we get right into it? So, as I mentioned, our theme cannot be any more fitting for the state of our country over the past year or so. So, given the emerging realignment in our nation between Black and Brown people and those of other races and ethnicities to end police violence, health disparities, and systemic racism, who else is really needed for us to exceed? Who isn't with us yet? And if you do have any suggestions on how we engage them, please offer them as well. And this is for any of you to answer.
So there's definitely has been a realignment between the Black and Brown community, which is it brings up good feeling. Those who aren't with us are those who advocate white supremacy, and those who are not willing to acknowledge their privilege, nor relinquish it. And so, in terms of trying to figure out how we engage them, I believe that it's through education, but I would caution that we have to continue to move forward. And at this point, not necessarily focus on who is not with us, but rather the work that needs to be done. Because I believe that with the alignment of the Black and Brown community, along with our white allies, that we have what it takes to accomplish what it is that we're after, and it's justice and equity at the end of the day.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Sean.
I'll speak next. I've thought about this question quite a long time. So there are about 70 million people who aren't with us. And those are the people that we know voted in the election and voted a different direction. There are thousands of people who did not march to the Capitol to destroy it, who are not with us. And many that were in the police force that did not hold them back, that are not with us. So the question, of how do we engage them? I think, I agree with Sean. We have momentum. We are moving forward. We have allies. But what people are failing to see, that this system of inequity is tearing down everyone. No one is winning. Racism doesn't just hurt Black people or Latino people, Latinx people, but it hurts everyone. And so we have to change the way that we're educating our children and the information that they're receiving and breathing every day. So I believe there's a lot of change that has to happen, whether we call on PBS to really evaluate the programming that our children are seeing, even from the most liberal place, whether we're calling on our education system to think through, what are our children reading and what are the books? Who wrote those books? What is the knowledge that they're bringing in? I call upon our healthcare system to think through, how am I treating my patients? How am I acknowledging what they're saying to me? And I feel that there's a way that all of us can step up a little bit more, go, as Danny sang in the song, to a higher ground, to really think through what can we do to not just change them, but even change ourselves. Lastly, I will say, it reminds me of the quote of Dr. Martin Luther King, that even in philanthropy, although it may be commendable, it must not cause the philanthropist to overlook the circumstances of economic injustice, which makes philanthropy necessary. And I would say that that is applicable to even this question. Those people are suffering. We can't overlook them, but we have to ask the question, why are they there? And then overcome the injustices of racism that puts all of us in this space.
I agree. And if I can just quickly add on, there was a part where you emphasized the importance of people who are already within our community and making sure that they're also a part of the fight for justice and that they're also taken into consideration when we talk about equality and equity. And I will just emphasize one thing that I noticed while being on the front lines of this movement was that there was an emphasis to include and bring Black trans lives, Black people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community also into this picture, right? Because for some odd reason, the Black community has had a difficult time, in particular with accepting people and identity and for who they are. And so I think that as we put in the effort to bring those, who I would just call them white supremacists, right? The same people who killed Dr. King, into the picture to hopefully change their minds and their hearts, that we would also change our minds and our hearts and making sure that we are intentional about bringing people of our own into this same space and making it known and reaffirming that their lives do matter and that they are as equally as important as a straight heterosexual Black man, a straight woman. So, I think that there's so many different layers to this. And there can be so much energy that we put into those of other races, but it is just as impactful and as important for us to do some self-introspection and looking deep into our community and our hearts to making sure that we are not perpetuating or living out that hatred, right? Or those things that are not in the light of Dr. King and his legacy, making sure that our hearts are pure in everything that we do. So it takes both and, it's a both and situation, but it's possible. It is possible.
Thank you all for those comments. I couldn't agree more. When we think of what we can do with others, every change really does start at home. It starts within ourselves, within our own communities. And thank you as well, Danny, for bringing up the LGBT community, because they are often left out of the conversation. So really, what can each of us do now? Not thinking on a larger scale, but more on an individual and through an individual lens. So beyond protesting and are giving money, those are typically the ways that we see people getting involved, but really in our daily lives, at work, with our families and our communities, to really end systemic racism and really all of the sectors that we mentioned: housing, education, healthcare, government, and the economy. I do see that there were many protests throughout the entire world last year, and those conversations seem to die down once the protests die down. So how do we really keep that moving?
I can start quickly. I had read something a while back, and unfortunately, I don't remember who wrote it. So if they hear this, I'm sorry. I'll give you all the credit in advance. But you know, I feel like we've been hearing this word reckoning a lot, to reckon with racism and to be in a space of reflection. And I had read, and the point that they were trying to make was we need to shift from a posture of racial reckoning into a posture of racial retention. And the difference between those two things is that making that change will help you stay in a constant posture, in a constant position of reflection. And so through that, it'll provide a stronger level of accountability in everything that you do, like I just said before. Because if we are just so consumed and worried about the moment, right, and putting a lawn sign up on your front porch, or buying a Black Lives Matter shirt at the height of the movement and saying you believe in justice and equality for Black lives, but when you're walking down the street and you see a Black man with a hoodie on his head, and you cross over to the opposite side of the sidewalk, and you are in your mind thinking of all of these different stereotypes and all of these different categories to fit this Black man into, right? That is where things get tricky. And so I think that it is important, in order for us to be constant and consistent in our efforts to dismantling oppression and racism, making sure that we are living out this legacy, that we shift from just a posture of reckoning, which is just a moment, into a posture of retention, which is consistent and will always last out, because we are constantly thinking, how can I do better? How can I be better? How can I set goals for myself? And making sure that I'm treating others around me with kindness, and holding all systems and all communities that I'm a part of accountable for injustice, and just in civil treatment towards Black and Browns. So I think that is one point that I have is and goal for myself even, is to make sure that I am in a constant state of racial retention.
Thank you for that, Danny. And I absolutely love the shifting from reckoning to retention. We might have to, save that for a quote that definitely resonates with me. And when you do that, you definitely can see more of the long lasting effects. Thank you for that. Bithiah, Sean, do you have anything to add to that?
I do, and I appreciate the movement from to retention, but we have to be, I think, also vigilant in being anti. We have to move to this anti-racist space and take responsibility for that. That means each and every one of us have to vote. Each and every one of us have to be aware of policy. We have to be aware of what's going on in our communities. When we think of housing, education, healthcare, government, all of it, there's a policy line. There's something that is connected to it, and we have voice. We can't just wait for someone else to lead us or sign up as that activist to knock on my door. We have to take it upon ourselves to educate ourselves and educate our children. And I too am glad that Danny brought up the LGBTQ+, but we have to know that even within every movement, there's still a higher place that we all can go. There's still work to be done. And I think when we think of going from a moment to a movement, the movement comes up with this place of, this is a rally. This is more than a rally cry. This has to turn into daily living. This is your everyday mantra. This is your practice. This is what we do. And there's a lot of personal responsibility that goes along with that. And as I would speak to many of the people that know Trump supporters, You have to help stop that craziness. It is no longer okay at the dinner table to turn your head or drink until you're so inebriated that you don't hear them anymore, or to say, oh, that was embarrassing with a nervous laugh. You know, we wrote a piece about this. These people who have been ignored, Saturday Night Live mocks them and we think it's funny. MSNBC tells us that they are uneducated, and Fox News place their ratings on them. So we have to figure out how we are moving our policy to be inclusive of everyone, but we have to vote. We have to raise up our voice. We have to take seats at the school board. We have to take seats at the Senate. We have to take seats all the way around us, that we not only have a movement, but we have the power behind that movement to sustain us, to retain us, and to keep us moving forward. We can no longer continue to come back to this place over and over and over again. This has been almost 400 years since the birthplace of the first Black child here in the United States that happened in 1625. We owe something to the next 400 years of Black children to come, that we do not rest on our laurels. We do not see this as, I got out there and took a selfie and I'm good. But this is about the future and what you are willing to do for that future and provide a better place for them that we came into.
Thank you for that. It's from my perspective, I will say that when we seen the murder of George Floyd, when we hear about the murder of Breonna Taylor, and the likes thereof, we're angered by it, we're infuriated by it, and it causes us to take a harder look and then to take action. But I believe that those actions were predicated on an emotional response. And the problem with emotional responses is that they're not long lasting. So when we see what's going on throughout this country, with the murder of unarmed black people, it shouldn't just trigger an emotional response, but should also trigger an intellectual response, to where now we have to figure out, how is it and why is it that people have the ability to kill us wholesale and get away with it with nothing being done. And that intellectual response will cause us to come together and centralize our intellectual resources, and then come up with a plan, an agenda, if you will, so that now we can see who is in line with what our agenda is, and then put them in whatever position that we need to put them, so that we can finally get freedom, justice, and equality within this country. If we continue to act just based on emotion, we're going to continue what we've done for over 400 years, and that's just spin our wheels in the mud and continue to be treated the way that we've been treated since being here.
Can I say one more thing? I love this discussion. I think we need more of this. We need more people from diverse points of view to say we are in common ground with each other. When I saw Danny's TEDx and him talking about school, and we look at the inequity of how Black children are treated, and we're not getting money to go to school when we're supposed to be there. You're asking me to be there. What is that about? Whose responsibility is it to do something? I watched Trial 4 and I cried. I can't even believe I'm on the panel with Sean Ellis. That is my responsibility to do something about policing now. That is my responsibility to do something about education and funding education now. That's not Danny's responsibility or Sean's responsibility. That's our responsibility. And we have to make this personal. And we are not making it personal. We see it as others until something happens to me.
Right.
Danny is me. Sean is me.
Right.
You're me. We're we. And we got to act like we're we.
I love that you mentioned that, Bithiah, because I think we all share the same sentiments as you, that when we watch that documentary, that docuseries Trial 4, I know I cried. And I know many people around me that I discussed it with it, and it sort of really opened our eyes to what's going on right here in our home, in our backyard. I'm born and raised in Boston. So have, my mother and my grandparents. So, we have roots here, and to see things like this happening, it really does hurt. And you do identify, as you said, where I am Sean, my husband, my children, that this is who we are. So thank you all for those comments. I love how we're getting on the topic of voting. And especially the fact, when you think of what can we do, how do we get to the root of this, how do we get to where the problem all starts, it's with voting. We need to get out there, make changes, as Sean said, identifying our agenda and really getting people in these positions that align with our agenda. So thank you all for that. So that's sort of a nice segue into my next question for Sean, actually. So, we were just talking about the docuseries Trial 4, and there's another that comes to mind, the Central Park 5, that we all, that I'm sure we all watched a few years ago. So they've really given us a glimpse into the world of racial injustice within our criminal justice system. So Sean, based on your experiences with the criminal justice system, what would you say are the top factors contributing to the lack of justice to people of color?
So the first one, and I think the obvious one, is that, there has been a history of criminalization of my Black skin. I want to go back as far as slavery, and when my ancestors attempted to escape from a condition that wasn't natural and that didn't belong in, the what was called at this time slave catchers was sent for them. And so now let's fast forward and evolve into the advent of the police department. The police department evolved out of the slave catchers. And so in the psychology and the approach that they take to police is inherent in that is the criminalization of my Black skin. And so now when we have a government and a society that perpetuates the racism that's inherent in that, is how can I get justice? I became a human in the eyes of white supremacists through the U.S. Constitution. At one point, I was considered property. And when I say I'm saying we. And so there has to be a change from that. We have to change the way that the police. I'm not saying there's not a need for police, although I do believe in defunding the police. I will say loud and I will say proudly that there is a need for law and order, but we need to re-envision what that looks like. Because the Black and brown communities are not policed in the same way that white communities are policed. And I know that because I live in Boston and I went to school in Needham, and I've seen the way that the police interact with Black and brown young people versus how they interact with young white people. And so that's a difference. There needs to be a difference there. The other thing too is that, and I want to lift up the work of Rashawn Hall and the ACLU in a series of what a difference a DA makes. Because there are, the people who are most affected by the criminal law system have no idea of the power of a district attorney. And so, there were people that was being put into office that had ill intent towards the Black and brown community, or if not ill intent, a disregard to how those communities were being acted with law enforcement. And so we have to get more involved in in politics and our literacy of politics, even with the mayor's election, one of the importance as it pertains to the Black and brown community, one of the important parts of a mayor's election is he appoints the commissioner of the police department. And the commissioner, he's the one that, has the ability to say what happens within the police department. And at that time in 1993, there was police corruption was rampant. The over policing, the brutality that was being perpetuated on Black and brown communities was acceptable. And if you've seen in the documentary, it was allowed to take place in part by Newman Flanagan. And so we need to be more aware of what's going on, particularly within those two elections, because it deals with how our people experience the criminal justice system. And then the other part of the reason, in my opinion, that why we do not receive justice, is because we're trampled on by the criminal justice system, but no one's really speaking out against it. When there's a plane crash, things stop, there's investigations done, and we tend to get to the bottom of why the plane went down. But when there's an injustice within the criminal justice system, it's business as usual. And there's really no investigation to see why things happen, how they happen, who was involved, so on and so forth. And that goes back to early on the relationship between the slave and the slave catchers, and how that evolved into how Black and brown communities were policed. And so, I'll stop on that note.
Thank you, Sean. I know you have so much to say in that regard. And what resonates with me while you're speaking is touching back to something Bithiah said earlier about educating yourself and educating others. Because when we get to the root of these problems, how many people don't realize that the mayor does get to appoint these positions, and they have that reign and that control over things that directly and proportionately affect our communities. And so that is a nice plug that there will be a mayoral race in Boston. So everyone needs to be getting involved. And when I say that, which I wanted to mention earlier, when Bithiah mentioned educating yourself and educating others, it's so important. If you find out something new, it was new to you, share it with someone. You're sharing information. There's so much benefit to that. So in the interest of time, let me move on. So I do have a question here for you, Danny. So we've heard during this celebration and during our celebration we had earlier this year for our Community Spirit Awards, how amazing your music is. And we all recognize that there is a power in music. It really allows us to feel and hear things that words don't do any justice. And you're able to reach and appeal to people in such a unique way. Later in our program, we are going to hear from 4 inspiring youth that are all using every effort to impact change and put an end to injustices. So do you have any suggestions on how we can encourage others to use their talents to take a stand against racism, no matter young or old?
Yeah, I mean, well, in the spirit of our Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, she always says that everyone has a role to play in the movement. And I think it was about maybe 2 years ago, I heard her say that. And at the time I was a student at the Boston Arts Academy, Boston's only public high school for the visual and performing arts. And I was making music, but I wasn't connecting my advocacy and my desire, which at the time was heavily focused on mass incarceration and the criminal illegal system. I wasn't connecting the two together. And so after I heard her speak, it was life-changing, and in many ways is why I am doing what I'm doing now. But I will say that everyone does have a role to play in the movement. And whether you are an artist, a storyteller, an educator, a table shaker, a movement builder, a disruptor, a frontline responder, a caregiver, sorry, you have a role to play. And, you know, it doesn't just have to be on the front lines of the movement. Like Bithiah was saying, you know, many people will just go and take their picture in front of the Black Lives Matter Plaza sign and call it a day and say that that's how I'm contributing. And then you also have other people who are just not sure in how they should get involved, how they should be engaged. And so they give financially. But like I was saying, it takes more than that. It takes us living this in, day out. And I'm reminded of an excerpt from Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community by Dr. King, the last book that he wrote. And he was talking about the hard truth that neither Blacks or whites have fought hard enough to expect change, to expect a new day of justice, a new day of healing and reconciliation. And in reflecting on that, you know, it stuck out to me because I believe that one of our main issues is that there are a great number of supporters and people who latch on to the idea of justice almost like a trend. And many will post the black square. Many people will, you know, buy that yard sign, buy that shirt and post and put in their caption that Black Lives Matter. But we don't have many people who are committing to the everyday introspection to reckon with the deep roots of racism. And it's so necessary for us to be doing that because of how deep this system goes, how deep the roots go. And just to quickly, and then I'll stop speaking, but just to speak off of what Sean was saying, we know that mass incarceration in particular disproportionately affects Black and brown men. And we know that this is a caste-like system. Michelle Alexander says it best in The New Jim Crow, that this is a system that you cannot see with your actual eyes, but it works just as powerful as if something was happening in the moment. And to then reference Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, she speaks to this racial caste and how this is not something that we can see, but it operates just as well. Now, how scary is that? That something that we cannot see operates and runs the whole system, even the political system, right? And so that leads me to say that we must be doing that constant work because of how deeply rooted this racial issue is. And even when it comes to respectability politics, and if we're talking about politics and just the whole political realm, it blows my mind to see so many people who are willing to sacrifice the truth and put the truth at the back burner for their own elevation. And I must remind all of us, in the spirit of voting, we should make sure that we are backing candidates who do have a Black and brown agenda and who live out that Black and brown agenda, and people who are willing to, even if it, you know, create some kind of big scene on CNN or MSNBC, whatever that is, on Channel 5, whatever that is, even if it seems as if it's something that's controversial, because they're standing for the truth, that we still back them and we are still consistent in that. And you know, Dr. King said that there are too few in number who are dismantling this underlying structure of caste. And so in order for us to win the war, we must have total participation and engagement. And so from politics to creating art that radically shifts our neighborhoods and creates an emotional encounter for healing and for change, whatever that is, or whether you're working in a hospital as a frontline worker, we must all make sure that we're committed in everything, because the only way that we will win this is if we do it together in unity. So I think that there are a number of ways for us to get involved, but if you don't think so, let me remind you that you do have a role to play in this larger movement. And that's what turns this movement into momentum that will keep this going until the end of the earth. Because as long as we're here, like Bithiah is saying, as long as we are here, it will stay alive, because we are the movement. We are the movement.
Thank you so much for that, Danny. So we do have about 5 minutes left, and I do want to ask Bithiah, while you were working with children and families during your consultant days in the philanthropic sector, what did you notice about the connection between the lack of inclusion and diversity to education and even health equity? You're muted, Bithiah, sorry.
I apologize.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy that Danny, and I think in the chat room, others mentioned CAST. We actually had a conversation with Isabella Wilkerson about her book CAST. And for those of you that do not have it, let us know. Actually, my computer is resting on my books, CAST, so we will happily give them to you. And dismantling this caste system is real. And when we think about BIPOC, right, we're not all the same. And people gain benefits, whether it is in class from the caste system, or whether it is, and that's part of the hard truth, right? Or if you're fully so-called able. So my mom was legally blind. She was my entire life. And you know, the way that I see how she had to navigate her life was very different than how we talk about justice or injustice. And I think many of those things, that class system seeps and caste system seeps into our philanthropy, right? So it determines and it sets the spirit of charity versus change. And we need change. We need philanthropists to be able to sit back and look at what are we funding? Why are we funding? What is the lens that I'm bringing to that funding? Who's the board that's judging that? And why? And be able to push back. What I was very fortunate that I worked with Milton Little and Marilyn Anderson Chase, and they let me have kind of a bit of autonomy around my philanthropic portfolio. One question I ask people, and this is something that is at the heart of all of our work, what are the assets that you see in a community when you go into a community? And the first year we asked that on our proposal, most of my programs came back and said that they were the assets. We don't even see people when they're in front of us. We do not see the assets in our children, our community, and then move those assets, help them move those assets forward. We talk about empowering people. People have power. We just systematically take it away from them. How do we partner with people and their power to move forward? And the last piece I'm going to say about this caste system and charity, we have to be comfortable that the movement that we're building is going to elevate people that may look like me, may not look like me, may not be my child. And that's part of getting to that space of equity. And that's a hard thing for many people. So as we look at the building blocks, particularly in philanthropy, and philanthropy has a lot of power, philanthropy is usually the front steps of a policy. It starts with the police foundation, you know, of philanthropic giving for us to look at an issue. What's the lens that we're looking? What's the lens that we're using to look at those issues and determine what is said, what is not said? What is the lens that we're using to make decisions, particularly charitable decisions, that then turns into policy and then turns into law? And how do we all take, and one of the things that we want to do, we really are interested in democratizing philanthropy. And how are we spending our dollars, our time, our treasures, our ties, our testimony to be a part of this that we're talking about, and doing our part, because we all do, whether we give to our church, whether we give to the United Way, whether we give at Harvard Pilgrim, we're all giving, or we're all supporting something. Those dollars mean something. And here's the last part that I'm going to say, and I'm so happy that Danny talked about this thing that we cannot see. We know that's a spirit, right? So that is the spirit that comes behind our work, behind our words, behind our action. And we have to make sure that we are changing and shifting that spirit to be part of an asset-based lens that we're looking at our community. Last example of this, too often we talk about our community, I'm going to say my community in a negative way. Even if 30% of us are poor, and that's the thing you hear, oh, there's poverty, oh, there's teen pregnancy, oh, there's, you know what I know? The majority of us are not that way. No one focuses on our asset. So if 30% of us are impoverished, that means 70% of us are not. Why are we not flipping the script to say, we are going to eradicate poverty, 70% of Black people are doing well, we want to move that number to 75%. And then after 75%, we're going to go to 80, then we're going to go to 90. What a wonderful way to talk about my community. Instead, that's not the way you talk about me in Roxbury. It's not the way you talk about me in Dorchester. That's not the way the Globe talks about me, even in their series on racism. We've got to change that spirit. We got to change that lens, because he that controls the image controls the mind. And we need to take back our image to make sure that our assets are seen, recognized, and celebrated.
Thank you very much for that, Bithiah. And I love that, taking back our image. That is really powerful. So the last question that I have for each of you, I know you all three do amazing work in your communities and do amazing advocacy work. And so as a sort of call to action for our audience here, what are some of the organizations that you work with that some of us could get involved with? And can we start with you, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ways that I like to stay engaged and involved is by following those who are constantly doing the work, who do the work for a living, like Sean, right? It's such a joy to be able to follow and watch and see the work that he is doing in community, even after being treated so badly by community, to have so much grace, to go back and pour back all that he has learned, and all that love that he has. So I think that's one way, is to connect and follow, making sure that you're staying in touch with even organizations. I know Violence in Boston does a lot of work. There's another organization, For the People, a lot of activist centered movements that you can follow. I'm sure I can put a list together and send to you as well. I can't think off the top of my head, but I also think that, education is power, and finding books and reading books and finding resources, especially for white people, right? If you are looking to live out this life of retention, find books and find those resources for yourself. Don't go and ask your Black friends. Don't go and ask your people of color friends. That is not their responsibility. Now, once you have read, feel free to have a conversation and ask if they'd be willing to have a conversation. But do the work and be consistent in that work. So those are the two ways that I think that you can get involved and stay engaged in the work of dismantling oppression and racism.
Thank you, Danny. So Sean, what about you? Do you have any organizations that you would suggest that we'd be able to get involved with? You are muted as well.
Thank you for that reminder. Yeah, I'm involved in a bunch of different organizations. Violence in Boston, definitely. Black Bostonian, the Ministry of Justice, the New England Innocent Project. But in brief, I would just say to connect with me and wherever you want to be, whatever you want to do. Like I can connect you with those who I'm connected with, because I'm not hoarding the resources. I'm not holding the connection with these organizations. But I will say, and it's important to say that, whoever we want to connect with, that it's important to challenge those organizations who are working in silos to come together and start working together, because it's going to take that collective action. We don't got to be friends, but we got to collectively work towards the objective. And so, whoever we align ourselves with, whoever we attach with, make sure that they're operating from the right spirit, which is the spirit of love, justice, and equality. And so with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much for that, Sean, and thank you for offering yourself as a resource. Bithiah, what about you?
I'm going to change this question a little bit. I am not going to recommend an organization. I'm going to recommend you do work on yourself, similar to what Danny said. And you develop your own personal equity lens, that no matter where you give or to whom you give, you apply your personal equity lens. And, you know, if you need help in creating one, that's what all of us are here to do, even Harvard Pilgrim. But we need individually to take responsibility. And that's something we've talked about, each and every one of us. Sean talked about it. Danny talked about it. We've all talked about it. Create your own personal equity lens so that when you give to an organization, you not only understand the outcomes that they're hoping to achieve, but also what your investment, and it is your investment, what that investment is doing within that organization. The other assets that or things that I can offer, our organization, our goal is to inform, reform, and transform philanthropy. We have a number of books. So if you would like a book, How to Become an Anti-Racist, or if you would like the book Cast, please get in contact with you and we will get that book out to them. Free, we want you to read it. And then lastly, I want to say, Sean said it best, we cannot do this work alone. We have been told we're rugged individuals, and it's a lie. And let me tell you how much of it is a lie. The Republicans do not work alone. Trump did not work alone. They worked in concert with each other. We have to work in concert with each other. No more silos. We are here to support each other. I'm here to support Danny. I'm here to support Sean. I'm here to support you. I'm here to support Harvard Pilgrim. I'm so happy they merged with Tufts. Now I don't have to choose between the two because they're my favorites. And we have to work together, and only together will we be able to conquer this evil and bring about the world that we want to see.
I love that. That's a great note to end on. No more silos. We are here to support each other, not just us on this panel, but everyone here in this audience, as well as a community. We are here to support each other. I would like to thank all three of our panelists, Bithiah Carter, Sean Ellis, and Danny Rivera, for taking the time to come and speak with us today. I hope that everyone in the audience is really leaving this discussion with some ideas on how they can go out into the world and make an impact. Because that's truly the objective in every day that we have. So I would now like to hand my virtual mic off to Andrea Velasquez, who will walk us through the next part of our program.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shatyra, B, Danny, and Sean. What an amazing panel discussion. That conversation just really kicked off today. And you each embody what our legend Dr. King stood for back then and today. And now for the moment where we recognize our youth for their creativity and diverse forms of expression. We received many amazing submissions, which did not make the selection process an easy one. This year, for our Martin Luther King Jr. observance, we continue to embrace the teaching of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and other great disruptors. The late Congressman John Lewis encouraged us all to be brave and use our voices. Young people around the world, such as Greta Thunberg, the Parkland shooting survivors, Molly Diaz, and Marie Copeny, are speaking up, representing Dr. King's message and putting Congressman Lewis's most iconic quote into action. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in trouble. Necessary trouble. Applicants were asked to respond in their own way to the theme above, with specific focus on the question, how are you using your voice to be a disruptive for good? The MLK Creative Expression Contest is open to students between the ages of 7 and 18. Award recipients will receive a $500 scholarship. Our first scholarship winner represents the city of Chelsea. To the fullest. This apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, as she comes from a family of disruptors for good. She is a member of the Chelsea Youth Commission and a high school senior who wants to major in biochemistry in college. Let's hear from Adriana Vega.
I was raised in Chelsea, which is a small city where I like to call home. We may be a small city, but we are full of amazing people, my people. that's me representing my city, if that makes sense. Like how Chelsea is, how my community is, and just like what I've learned through working in the community and like basically being on the front lines during COVID, which is like kind of, high risk and like in general. Honestly, throughout this whole pandemic, since the start till now, it's really shown how strong our Chelsea residents are, how like they don't give up really easily. Like even in the hard midst of like they're getting evicted out of their house, and they reach out for that help to fix it. Like they don't just lose all hope. They reach out for that help and they get that help because we created such a strong community in which that they can, reach out that hand and get the help that they need. My Aunt Gladys, who runs the community service agency called the Chelsea Collaborative, started a food pantry out of her front porch, giving food out to people of Chelsea. Over the spring and summer, I spent most of my mornings in the senior center preparing boxes of food for different size families and making labels to get picked up and dropped off. Honestly, this is all I've ever known in my life. My dad was a really prominent person in our community. So was my Aunt Gladys Vega. So that's really how I was brought up, of like, this is our community, we need to fight for it. I feel so fondly about that. So that's kind of also the reason why I was like, yes, this is what I'm about. Like, this really resonates with me and my beliefs and things like that. As a young Latina, like young woman, I just feel like since I have that outlet, I should be a voice for other young Latino women, or just my community in general. Like I have that outlet, I have that space to do that, to voice my opinion, to voice the concerns, and like I just feel like I'm in that perfect position to do that. Being on the front lines in my city really changed my view on how I live. I always grew up with food on the table and a roof over my head. The long food lines with more than 1,000 people some days have shown me that you can't take what you have for granted. And Harvard Pilgrim has been very, very helpful to the collaborative. We've had boxes brought to us, actual people and hands helping us. It's nice having organizations like this, grouping up together and helping in this time where it's like everybody feels like they can't do a lot, but it's like that one person coming to help us goes a long way, or like that one donation goes a long way. So, I mean, we're really grateful for what Harvard Program has done, and grateful that they're a partner of ours.
How awesome is she? Congratulations, Adriana. Our next scholarship winner is a 7th grade METCO student who hails from Jamaica Plain, Massachusetts. She uses her voice to educate her peers, teachers, and faculty on what it is like to be a young woman of color in today's society. Here is more about Amara Pierce.
I use my voice as a disruptor for good on numerous occasions. One of those times was when I gave a speech to my entire grade about the pros and cons of being a Black METCO student at a predominantly white school.
It's also challenging being the only African Americans in my classes.
Usually, I want to educate them on some things because they don't really understand what it's like to come from Boston and then travel far to go to Cohasset. So I want them to know like the things I have to go through, and how like when I'm in the hallway, I'm usually the only like person of color there. I feel like I didn't want to hold stuff in. I think I just wanted people to understand how life like me is. I want people of my age or younger to know we are the future and we will make decisions that will affect the next generation. We have the power to change. We all just need to know that who you are and what you have done in the past leads to the future. I feel like some people might take it in and they might change what they do or what they say or whatever. And then I feel like other people, they might not remember, but maybe if they think back on it, they might change. I think the more I speak out and the more people hear what I have to say, I think the more I'll change. So when you see someone on the street, don't look down upon them, because we have to build each other up before we can change the world. I'd like to say thank you, because now there's people like me who they've heard what I had to say, and then now other people will hear what we have to say.
awesome is she? Congratulations, Amara. Our third scholarship winner likes to express herself artistically. She advocates for social justice through protest, art, and is a leader amongst her peers. Here is Amaya Key's story.
The Big Sisters Foundation sent out a mass email telling us about the competition. So it popped up on my phone, and I looked through it, and then I was like, Mom, I'm doing this. My immediate thought process on like how I could use my voice to like kind of make change in the world and whatnot was protest art, basically. It's kind of like what my type of artwork was supposed to represent. Like this past summer with the events happening with COVID and then the George Floyd incident, there was a lot of talk about injustice in the world, and we ended up doing a whole type of semester about protest art and how artists use their voice in different ways to send messages to show what they basically believe in like different creative ways, whether that be through like the expression of a book or like through artwork or through poetry. So I was inspired by that. I did have a few key things that I definitely wanted to have in my piece. So like basically immediately I wanted to speak out on, I know it was in my essay, but the thing of willful ignorance, where it's basically like the saying of rose-colored glasses, where it's like things are happening around you, but you choose not to see it. And the choice part of it is really what's important. So that was kind of the main idea I wanted to go through, and it was just a process of figuring out how I was gonna show that message. So I chose to do the three skulls of the saying, see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. I went and did research on it and figured out that it's more so refusing to see, hear, or speak about the evil in the world, right? Where I thought that was an example of willful ignorance. It was supposed to be a Black woman up in the front and center with the skulls behind her, basically showing the see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil, with a message that says that willful ignorance, hurting those that you refuse to see. So basically it's like by choosing not to see or acknowledge the movement and like what Black people have been fighting for to get equal rights and stuff is hurting those people that you're not allowing yourself to see. Ignoring the problem doesn't fix the problem, it makes it worse, basically. I like to have artwork with a message behind it. So it would be really nice that in my future that I could keep posting art and showing art with protest in mind to try and make there be change in the world.
How awesome is that? Congratulations, Amaya. And last and certainly not least, we have the young music mogul, Karan Nixon. He too expresses himself through his art. Additionally, he's a young entrepreneur who owns a DJing business and teaches young people how to spin on the ones and twos. Let's hear more about Karan.
Alright, this my rap and how I inspire people to do good. Look, me, QDOWG, DJ rapper, yup, that's me. And you know I'm all about the positivity. 1, 2, 3. Come on, listen to me.
Since I was like, I don't know, a baby, my mom's been playing music around the house, and she was in this program. She's in this group called The Gifted Ones, which is a performing arts company where we teach life skills through the arts. And she was in the group first, and then I came into the group. So I started writing my own by myself, and now here I am.
14 and I'm spreading love through the world. I'm so dope, I don't need cuss words. I inspire little kids to go and chase dreams. Got my little cousins looking up to me.
I was just thinking about how Martin Luther King, if I every time I seen like a movie or something, how he would inspire me. He was a really brave person. I was just thinking about what I was like, kind of like comparing me with some activists and leaders that inspire people. So I just put two and two together. So I say, oh, Martin Luther King, he used to march in the marches. Recently, I went to the marches in downtown. downtown Hartford. And I was just thinking like, okay, we do that. So I put that in there.
I feel like X when I go to the protest, shout Black Lives Matter so that people have justice. A lot going on, so we really gotta yell. One of Floyd's killers still didn't go to jail.
I have my own business. I'm a DJ. I've been DJing for a long time now, but this is my business. And at the DJing gigs, if they want to learn, I let them come up. I let them scratch a little bit, and I teach them like what to do and stuff. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can do anything you want. Positivity. Like you just need to be positive all the time. Like it's right now. You should be no negativity, especially right now. It's just crazy right now. The world is crazy, and it shouldn't be any negativity right now. Everybody needs to stick together during these times.
When I rap about life and love. We don't need negativity during COVID, bruh.
A lot of companies that all don't like listen to the kids, the youth, because we're the future, and I feel like we should have some say. And yeah, I actually really appreciate that. And just hearing our voices and telling just asking us what we think. I really appreciate that.
Maybe if we all work together, this can change, but we gotta keep marching, saying his name, but it gotta be peaceful. Martin Luther King said it gotta be peaceful. Martin Luther King.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is a really big opportunity for me. Thank you again, Hartford Pilgrim Healthcare, for this big opportunity.
Me, QDOWG, DJ rapper, yup, that's me. And you know I'm all about that positivity. 1, 2, 3. Come on, listen to me.
That was awesome. Congratulations, Karan. Again, join me in congratulating Adriana, Amara, Amaya, and Karan on their Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship Awards. And now we did have 2 honorable mentions as well. Samantha Walsh with the great artistic submission, and Elizabeth Zeno with an inspiring essay. A round of applause for these young ladies as well. And now I hand the virtual mic over to my Martin Luther King chair, Clarice Bouvet, for closing remarks.
Thank you, Drea, and thank you to our Creative Expressions contest winners, applicants, as well as today's panelists for using their voices, minds, and hearts to be disruptors for good. I feel like there is hope for the future knowing that there are people like them fighting this great fight. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was not just a civil rights activist. He was also a humanitarian. He worked on social welfare campaigns such as the Chicago Open Housing Movement, the Poor People's Campaign, and so much more. He believed that we are all born with privileges we may not be aware of. Some of these privileges being having a nice home, having good health, being able to speak, or any opportunities you have that someone else may not. There's always someone out there in need, and we should do our best to seek to serve. To quote Dr. King, we need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice. Not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity. And with that, I'd like to offer you all an opportunity to engage in an optional service project. Volunteers will write digital letters and/or create physical cards to brighten the days of older people and others at risk of isolation during this pandemic. The link to join this activity will be included in the chat. To close us out, I'd love to welcome back Danny Rivera Jr. to the stage for one more powerful music selection. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you have a great MLK weekend.
Thank you so much, Clarice, and the rest of the Harvard Pilgrim family. So grateful. We shall overcome. I know I said it at the last event, but we shall overcome. You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and
you can't find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out and move mountains. We gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. I'll rise up, high like the waves, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again for you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting harder to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. We'll bring it to its feet. Move I'll rise up, I'll rise like the day, I'll rise up, I'll rise unafraid, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. I will rise up, I'll rise like today, I'll rise up, in spite of the ache, I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again for you, for you, for you, for you, yeah. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. One more time, deep in my heart. Deep in my heart. Come on, Harvard, do you believe? I do believe that we shall overcome someday. Oh, that we shall Thank you so much. We shall overcome. We shall overcome.